The Lost Civilization of Atlantis, a sunken truth beneath the waves. For thousands of years, whispers of a sunken empire have drifted through the corridors of human history. A civilization so advanced, so radiant, that its memory still lingers like an echo of a forgotten dream. Atlantis, the mythical island nation first described by the Greek philosopher Plato, has become the centerpiece of one of the greatest conspiracies in history. Was it a real place, a hidden chapter of humanity's past swallowed whole by the sea, or merely a cautionary tale crafted by a philosopher to critique the arrogance of powerful nations? The line between myth and reality blurs when we trace the trail of evidence left behind in ancient writings, submerged ruins, and inexplicable anomalies across the globe. Plato described Atlantis in astonishing detail, an island empire larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, believed to be the Strait of Gibraltar, thriving around 9,000 years before his time. He spoke of concentric rings of land and water, majestic temples coated in precious metals, fertile plains irrigated by canals, and a people who had mastered architecture, engineering, and maritime power far beyond their contemporaries. Then, as if punished by divine judgment, Atlantis was swallowed by the ocean in a single day and night of misfortune. To skeptics, this reads as an allegory, a parable about hubris, pride, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Yet to seekers of hidden truths, it feels too vivid, too precise to be mere fiction. Could Plato have been relaying an account preserved from a much older tradition, perhaps one reaching back into the murky dawn of lost civilizations erased by time? The very idea forces us to reconsider what we know about humanity's distant past. Modern archaeologists often dismiss Atlantis as a legend. Still, scattered throughout the world are fragments of mysteries that fuel suspicion it may not have been purely imaginary. Off the coast of Japan, beneath the waters of Yonaguni, lies a series of massive stone structures, terraces, steps, and platforms that resemble the remnants of a drowned city. Near the Bahamas, explorers have discovered strange formations known as the Bimini Road, a pathway of huge rectangular stones aligned in a manner too precise for mere chance. In the Mediterranean, ruins of ancient cities such as Relic and Pavlopetri rest beneath the sea, reminders that cataclysmic floods and earthquakes have indeed devoured entire settlements before. If small cities could vanish beneath the waves, why not an entire civilization? What's more chilling is that the timeline of Atlantis, according to Plato, places its destruction at around 11,600 years ago, eerily close to the end of the Younger Dryas period, when Earth experienced massive climate upheavals, sea levels rose, and great floods swept across continents. Could Atlantis have been one of the casualties of this planetary transformation? Conspiracy theorists argue that the suppression of Atlantis as a legitimate subject of study is no accident. They claim governments and academic institutions deliberately ridicule or ignore it because acknowledging its existence would unravel everything we think we know about human history. After all, if Atlantis was real, it would mean advanced civilizations thrived long before the rise of Egypt, Sumer, or Mesopotamia, the so-called cradles of civilization. It would mean humans possessed knowledge and technologies lost to time, perhaps technologies that rival or even surpass our own. Could this explain the enigmatic feats of construction seen in megalithic sites like Stonehenge, Pumapunku in Bolivia, or the Great Pyramids of Giza, sites whose precision continues to baffle modern engineers? Adding fuel to the fire, explorers and historians over centuries have claimed to stumble upon traces of Atlantis or remnants of its culture. The Mayan and Aztec civilizations, for instance, tell myths of a place called Aztlan, a lost ancestral homeland across the waters. In Egypt, priests told Greek travelers of great floods that destroyed earlier dynasties. Even in Native American traditions, there are stories of lost islands, advanced peoples, and great deluges that reshaped the earth. Is it possible these disparate legends are fragmented memories of a single cataclysm that erased Atlantis from existence? The conspiracy deepens when we consider modern attempts to search for Atlantis. In the 20th century, psychic Edgar Cayce predicted that Atlantis would resurface near the Bahamas, and although dismissed as pseudoscience, his predictions coincided eerily with the discovery of the Bimini Road. Meanwhile, oceanographers and satellite imaging have uncovered underwater anomalies in the Atlantic that some believe could be remnants of vast man-made structures. Yet, whenever such discoveries surface, they are quickly dismissed, buried under a wave of debunking, or labeled as natural formations. Skeptics argue this is simply science doing its job, but believers see a pattern of suppression, a conspiracy to keep humanity blind to its true origins. Why hide Atlantis? Some suggest the reason is far more sinister than protecting historical narratives. They argue that knowledge of Atlantis might reveal secrets of free energy, advanced engineering, or forgotten sciences that could upend modern civilization. If humanity once possessed technologies that harness the Earth's energy fields, magnetic currents, or even forms of anti-gravity, such revelations could threaten the power structures of governments, corporations, and militaries. Knowledge is power, and a rediscovery of Atlantean wisdom might dismantle the control systems carefully preserved over millennia. Even more unsettling are the whispers that Atlantis was not merely a human civilization. Certain esoteric traditions and occult writings describe Atlanteans as beings with heightened spiritual abilities, capable of telepathy, energy manipulation, and cosmic awareness. If such a civilization truly existed, what happened to them? Did they perish in the flood, or did survivors scatter across the globe, seeding new civilizations and passing down fragments of their knowledge in myths, temples, and secret societies? Some conspiracy theorists believe that secret brotherhoods, such as the Freemasons or the Illuminati, guard remnants of Atlantean wisdom to this very day, preserving it for purposes unknown. Are we unknowingly living in a world still influenced by the shadows of a lost empire? As we peer into the abyss of this mystery, the haunting possibility lingers. Atlantis may not be gone. It may be waiting, buried beneath the ocean, its ruins cloaked in silence until the sea decides to give them back. Or perhaps it is hidden in plain sight, disguised as another ancient civilization we have misidentified, its true story erased by deliberate design. The conspiracy surrounding Atlantis is not just about a lost city. It is about the possibility that history itself is a carefully constructed illusion, a selective narrative that hides more than it reveals. And so the question remains, was Atlantis only a myth whispered by Plato's pen, or is it the greatest secret humanity has ever kept? A secret that, if revealed, could rewrite the story of our species. The assassination of John F. Kennedy, shadows behind the bullet. Few moments in modern history have been replayed, dissected, and questioned as relentlessly as the fatal shots fired in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963. The assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy did more than end a presidency. It birthed a labyrinth of suspicion, intrigue, and unanswered questions that continue to haunt America and the world. Officially, history tells us that a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, positioned on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, squeezed the trigger of his rifle and altered the course of history forever. Yet from the very beginning, cracks in the official narrative invited speculation. Was Oswald truly acting alone? Or was he a pawn in a much larger game orchestrated by forces lurking in the shadows of power? The answers may be buried beneath decades of secrecy, redacted files, and the quiet silencing of inconvenient voices. The conspiracy begins with the improbabilities surrounding Oswald himself. A disaffected ex-Marine, Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War, married a Russian woman, then returned to the United States with little consequence. A bizarrely lenient treatment for someone suspected of Soviet sympathies. When Kennedy was shot, Oswald was swiftly arrested, accused, and declared the sole culprit before any thorough investigation. 2 days later, as if fate wanted the case permanently sealed, Oswald himself was shot dead by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, live on television. The world watched in shock as the man accused of assassinating the president was silenced forever, raising the first of many red flags. If Oswald was truly the lone shooter, why was he eliminated so quickly? And why did he himself proclaim, "I'm just a patsy"? The Warren Commission, appointed to investigate the assassination, concluded in 1964 that Oswald acted alone. Yet their findings left more questions than answers. Central to the controversy is the so-called magic bullet, the single projectile that supposedly passed through Kennedy, exited, struck Texas Governor John Connally multiple times, and emerged almost pristine. Ballistics experts and skeptics alike have ridiculed this scenario as implausible, if not impossible. To believe the official account, one must accept that a single bullet defied the laws of physics, changing trajectory multiple times yet remaining intact. This inconsistency has become one of the most iconic symbols of doubt surrounding the case. But the shadows grow darker when we examine the potential motives of those who may have wanted Kennedy dead. The Cold War raged at its peak. Kennedy had stood toe-to-toe with the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis, yet behind closed doors, he had begun moving toward peaceful negotiations and even hinted at reducing America's military involvement abroad. Some whispered this peace-seeking stance angered the military-industrial complex, those shadowy corporations and government entities profiting from perpetual war. In his farewell address, President Eisenhower had warned of the growing, unchecked power of this complex. Was Kennedy the next victim of its insatiable hunger for conflict and control? Others point to Kennedy's fraught relationship with the CIA. After the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, Kennedy had publicly taken responsibility but privately blamed the CIA for misleading him. He even vowed to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. To conspiracists, this was not merely a declaration of frustration, but a death sentence. The CIA, already entangled in covert coups and assassinations worldwide, may have turned its methods inward. Could rogue agents, fearful of Kennedy dismantling their power, have orchestrated his assassination? The Mafia adds yet another layer to this web. Kennedy's brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, had waged an aggressive war against organized crime, targeting mob bosses and dismantling their empires. Many of these mobsters had once held influence in American politics and business. Some even assisted covertly with CIA operations, including plots against Cuban leader Fidel Castro. If the Kennedys threatened both their operations and their government alliances, the Mafia had motive aplenty for revenge. Did mob bullets pierce the Texas air that fateful day, masked beneath the chaos of official accounts? And then there is Cuba. Fidel Castro, long a thorn in America's side, had survived multiple CIA-backed assassination attempts, including bizarre plots involving poisoned cigars and exploding seashells. The Bay of Pigs disaster had fueled his rage against the United States, while Kennedy's wavering stance on Cuba may have left him vulnerable to retaliation. Some believe Cuban operatives, with or without Soviet backing, had a hand in orchestrating Dallas as payback for America's failed attempts on Castro's life. If true, it would mean Kennedy was not merely the victim of domestic betrayal, but a casualty of international vendetta simmering beneath the Cold War surface. What makes the Kennedy assassination such fertile ground for conspiracy is the sheer abundance of contradictory evidence. Eyewitness accounts vary wildly, with some swearing they heard shots from the infamous grassy knoll, not just from the depository. Films like the Zapruder footage, analyzed frame by frame, suggest angles and impacts inconsistent with the lone gunman theory. Medical reports of Kennedy's wounds, photographs, and X-rays have long been disputed, with some claiming evidence was altered, suppressed, or even replaced to fit the official narrative. Why would the government withhold, redact, or lock away so much material if the truth were as simple as the Warren Commission claimed? The truth becomes even murkier with the release of classified documents decades later. In 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that Kennedy was probably assassinated as the result of a conspiracy, though they could not identify who was responsible. Later declassified files have revealed CIA surveillance of Oswald, hints of mob involvement, and shadowy connections between Oswald and intelligence operatives. Yet even now, some of the most critical files remain locked away, delayed from public release for reasons unexplained. What secrets are so dangerous, even after more than half a century, that they cannot be revealed? What makes the Kennedy assassination such fertile ground for conspiracy is the sheer abundance of contradictory evidence. Eyewitness accounts vary wildly, with some swearing they heard shots from the infamous grassy knoll, not just from the depository. Films like the Zapruder footage, analyzed frame by frame, suggest angles and impacts inconsistent with the lone gunman theory. Medical reports of Kennedy's wounds, photographs, and X-rays have long been disputed, with some claiming evidence was altered, suppressed, or even replaced to fit the official narrative. Why would the government withhold, redact, or lock away so much material if the truth were as simple as the Warren Commission claimed? The truth becomes even murkier with the release of classified documents decades later. In 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that Kennedy was probably assassinated as the result of a conspiracy, though they could not identify who was responsible. Later declassified files have revealed CIA surveillance of Oswald, hints of mob involvement, and shadowy connections with Oswald and intelligence operatives. Yet even now, some of the most critical files remain locked away, delayed from public release for reasons unexplained. What secrets are so dangerous, even after more than half a century, that they cannot be revealed? For many, the Kennedy assassination represents a turning point in history, a moment when the public began to doubt the transparency of their government. Before Dallas, Americans largely trusted official narratives. Afterward, suspicion became second nature. The idea that forces beyond democratic control could remove a sitting president shattered illusions of freedom. If the most powerful man in the world could be struck down in broad daylight, his death obscured by layers of secrecy, what else might be concealed from us? And then comes the chilling possibility that the conspiracy does not lie in who fired the bullets, but in why Kennedy was chosen as a target. Some theorists whisper that Kennedy had learned secrets too great to reveal. Knowledge of extraterrestrial encounters, secret societies, or hidden technologies guarded by the world's elites. In 1963, Kennedy had requested greater access to classified UFO files, and just days before his death, he spoke of the need for transparency in government. Was his assassination not just about politics, but about silencing a man who threatened to lift the veil on humanity's greatest secrets? The assassination of John F. Kennedy remains an open wound in history, not because the case lacks closure, but because the closure offered feels incomplete, unsatisfying, and tainted with deception. It is a story of shadows, of a bullet that traveled impossibly, of witnesses ignored, of files concealed, and of a lone gunman who may have never been alone at all. Each theory, whether involving the CIA, the Mafia, Cuba, or shadowy elites, forms a thread in a tapestry that may never be fully unraveled. Yet perhaps the greatest conspiracy is not who killed Kennedy, but why the truth remains hidden. Was it to protect national security, to prevent panic, or to preserve the myth of control in a nation built on freedom? Or was it because exposing the real story would reveal that the world is ruled not by the leaders we elect, but by unseen hands pulling strings from the darkness? The mystery of the Knights Templar, guardians of forbidden knowledge. In the dust of medieval Europe, amid the clash of swords and the banners of crusading armies, rose a brotherhood unlike any other, the Knights Templar. Officially, they were holy warriors, sworn to protect pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem and to defend Christendom against its enemies. Yet behind the white mantles adorned with a red cross, the Templars harbored secrets that would one day fuel centuries of speculation, suspicion, and conspiracy. For nearly 200 years, they grew in wealth and power, amassing vast estates, building fortresses, and establishing the foundations of modern banking. Then, as swiftly as they rose, they were annihilated, crushed by kings and condemned by popes, their leaders burned at the stake, their order outlawed. But why? Was it merely greed and politics that destroyed them, or was there something far more sinister, something they had uncovered that threatened the very foundations of religious and political power? The official tale says that by the early 14th century, the Knights Templar had grown too powerful. King Philip IV of France, deep in debt to the order, conspired to bring them down. On Friday, October 13, 1307, a date that still echoes as unlucky, the Templars were arrested en masse, accused of heresy, blasphemy, and devil worship. They were charged with spitting on the cross, practicing forbidden rites, and venerating a mysterious idol called Baphomet. Under torture, many confessed, though most later recanted. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was executed by fire, allegedly cursing both king and pope with his dying breath. Within a generation, both Philip and Pope Clement V were dead, and Europe whispered of divine retribution. But behind the accusations lies a conspiracy still debated today. What secret knowledge did the Templars possess that made them so dangerous? Rumors swirl that during their time in Jerusalem, the Templars discovered treasures buried beneath the Temple of Solomon. Some claim they unearthed sacred relics, the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, or manuscripts proving truths that could undermine the Church's authority. Others believe they discovered esoteric wisdom, ancient sciences, or hidden lineages that contradicted Christian orthodoxy. Was their rapid rise to power fueled not just by martial prowess in banking, but by the possession of secrets too perilous to reveal? The idol known as Baphomet deepens the mystery. To their accusers, it was proof of devil worship, an image of a horned pagan god. To conspiracy theorists, it represents something more symbolic, perhaps a misunderstood emblem of hidden wisdom. Later occultists would depict Baphomet as a hermetic symbol of duality, male and female, light and dark, material and spiritual. Did the Templars, in their secret rites, preserve knowledge from ancient mystery schools, truths erased by the rise of the Church? If so, their destruction was not merely political, it was ideological, a war to silence a brotherhood guarding truths that could shatter the religious order of Europe. The banking system created by the Templars also fuels conspiracy theories. Pilgrims could deposit wealth in one Templar outpost and withdraw it in another, effectively creating the first international credit system. This innovation granted the order immense economic power, rivaling monarchs themselves. But what if this system was not just a medieval convenience? Some whisper that the Templars stumbled upon deeper knowledge of finance, trade, and influence that would later shape the hidden hand of global banking. Were they the ancestors of modern secret societies accused of controlling world economies? The Freemasons, the Illuminati, the unseen elite? When the order was destroyed, their treasures seemingly vanished. Despite the seizures, no vast wealth was ever officially recovered. This absence only fuels speculation. Did the Templars smuggle their greatest secrets away before the crackdown? Legends abound of treasure fleets escaping France, carrying gold, relics, and manuscripts to distant lands. Some point to Scotland, where the Templars allegedly found refuge and later merged with early Freemasonry. Others suggest voyages to the New World long before Columbus, leaving behind carved symbols and stone markers in places as far-flung as Nova Scotia's Oak Island. Could the infamous hidden treasure of Oak Island be nothing less than the lost wealth and wisdom of the Templars? Their supposed survival through secret societies lies at the heart of many modern conspiracies. Freemasonry, with its mysterious rituals, symbols, and focus on architecture, is often tied to the Templar legacy. Some believe Masonic lodges preserve fragments of Templar knowledge, from sacred geometry to hidden truths about humanity's origins. The Rosicrucians, another esoteric brotherhood, are also said to be heirs of Templar wisdom, guarding spiritual insights disguised in allegory. Even the myth of the Holy Grail has been entwined with the Templars, casting them as guardians of Christ's bloodline or keepers of a chalice imbued with divine power. Were the Templars truly extinguished, or did they simply vanish into the shadows, continuing their mission under new guises? What makes the Templar conspiracy endure is the sheer number of unanswered questions. Why were the charges of heresy so elaborate, describing rites and symbols far outside the ordinary scope of medieval accusations? Why did their financial records vanish along with their treasure? Why do symbols associated with the Templars, such as the Red Cross, the chalice, and the double-headed eagle, continue to reappear in the iconography of later secret orders? The possibility lingers that their destruction was not simply about a king's greed, but about silencing an order that knew too much, that possessed truths capable of destabilizing both throne and altar. Even today, whispers of the Templars permeate culture and politics. Some conspiracy theorists believe the order survives in the highest levels of modern power structures, influencing world events from behind closed doors. Others claim the Templars guard relics still hidden in secret vaults beneath churches, mountains, or even beneath the sands of Jerusalem. And there are those who argue that the Templars' true treasure was not gold or relics, but knowledge. Knowledge of humanity's lost history, of cosmic truths, of hidden sciences capable of reshaping the world. If such knowledge exists, perhaps it was safer in the hands of an order sworn to secrecy than in the hands of kings and popes eager to exploit it. The story of the Knights Templar is more than medieval history. It is a doorway into a deeper mystery, a reminder that beneath the surface of every crusade, every holy war, lies a struggle not just for land and power, but for control of truth itself. Were the Templars guardians of forbidden knowledge, betrayed by the very institutions they once served? Or are their legends exaggerations, born of torture, myth, and the human hunger for hidden meaning? Whatever the case, their downfall did not extinguish the flames of their mystery. Instead, it ignited centuries of conspiracy theories, secret societies, and treasure hunts that continue to this very day. Somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten vault or beneath a ruined temple, their secret waits, an echo of a brotherhood that may never have truly died. The Shroud of Turin, a holy relic or a masterpiece of deception? In the hushed silence of a dim cathedral in Turin, Italy, lies a relic that has drawn pilgrims, skeptics, scientists, and conspiracists alike. A linen cloth nearly 14 feet long, faintly imprinted with the haunting image of a crucified man. Known as the Shroud of Turin, it is venerated by millions as the burial shroud of Jesus Christ himself, an artifact that bore witness to the resurrection. Yet others dismiss it as nothing more than a medieval forgery, an ingenious hoax crafted to inspire devotion or perhaps to manipulate the faithful. For centuries, the shroud has existed at the crossroads of science, faith, and mystery, fueling one of history's most enduring conspiracies. Is it truly a divine relic, or is its authenticity deliberately obscured to conceal truths too dangerous for the world to know? The shroud first emerged in recorded history in the 14th century, when a French knight displayed it in a small church in Lire. Even then, church authorities were suspicious. Bishops questioned its authenticity, and Pope Clement VII declared it not to be a relic but an image to be revered for what it represented. Yet the image itself was unlike anything seen before. Unlike painted icons of Christ, the shroud's figure appeared ghostly, almost photographic, revealing both front and back views of a man's body, beaten, scourged, pierced, and crowned with thorns. No artist of the medieval era could explain how such an imprint was made. The more it was examined, the more its mysteries deepened. The most startling feature is the image's negative effect. When first photographed in 1898 by Secondo Pia, the resulting negatives revealed a detailed, lifelike face and body, far clearer than what the naked eye could perceive. Suddenly, what looked like a faded cloth became a striking portrait of suffering. How could medieval hands have created an image that anticipated photographic techniques centuries before photography itself existed? To believers, this was proof that the shroud carried a miraculous imprint left behind by divine light at the moment of resurrection. To skeptics, it was a clever illusion, yet one that science still struggles to replicate convincingly. In 1988, radiocarbon dating tests seemed to shatter the relic's sanctity. 3 independent laboratories analyzed samples of the cloth and concluded it dated between 1260 and 1390 AD, squarely within the medieval period. To many, this was decisive evidence. The shroud was a fake, a relic created in an age when demand for holy artifacts flourished. But rather than ending the debate, the test ignited an even greater storm of controversy. Critics pointed out that the tested samples came from a corner of the cloth possibly contaminated by centuries of handling, fire damage, and later repairs. Others accused the laboratories of bias, rushing results, or even deliberately manipulating data to discredit the relic. If the shroud truly was Christ's burial cloth, would powerful institutions not have reason to bury the truth, to preserve theological control over the faithful? Adding to the enigma are the physical and medical details embedded in the image. Forensic experts studying the shroud note that the wounds, blood patterns, and anatomical precision are remarkably consistent with Roman crucifixion practices. The man depicted shows scourge marks from a flagrum whip, swelling consistent with beatings, nail wounds in the wrists, not the palms as medieval art often depicted, and blood flow patterns that align with gravity on a crucified body. Even traces of pollen embedded in the fibers suggest origins in the Middle East, including species unique to the Jerusalem area. Are these coincidences, or is the shroud a silent witness to an execution 2,000 years ago? Yet conspiracies swirl not only around the question of authenticity, but also around the possibility of deliberate suppression. Over centuries, the shroud has been kept under tight church control, rarely displayed and only selectively studied. Critics argue that the Vatican fears what the shroud might reveal, not just about Christ's passion, but about truths that could destabilize Christian orthodoxy. If authentic, it could challenge interpretations of Scripture and elevate the relic to an object of near idolatrous worship. If proven false, it could shatter faith for millions. Perhaps the Church prefers the shroud's ambiguity, allowing mystery to fuel devotion without risking definitive answers. Others speculate that the shroud's true origins may not even be Christian. Some suggest it could be linked to ancient burial practices or secret traditions preserved by groups like the Knights Templar. Intriguingly, Templar confessions under torture described worshipping a mysterious bearded head, which some theorists connect to the shroud's image. Could the Templars have guarded the cloth centuries before it surfaced in France? Was it part of a hidden lineage of relics that carry truths inconvenient to both church and crown? Science has not silenced the mystery. In recent decades, experiments using ultraviolet lasers and radiation bursts have shown that reproducing the shroud's image requires energy far beyond medieval capabilities. Some researchers theorize that the image could have been created by a sudden release of radiant energy, an idea eerily aligned with accounts of Christ's resurrection. If true, the shroud would not simply be a relic, but physical evidence of a supernatural event. But such a revelation could upend the very balance of faith and science, shaking institutions built on centuries of controlled belief. Would it be any wonder, then, if efforts were made to keep the shroud forever shrouded in doubt? The conspiracy surrounding the Shroud of Turin is less about proving whether it is real or fake, and more about the power of uncertainty. A relic that is definitively real or definitively false loses its mystery. One that sits forever in between becomes a tool, fueling faith, inspiring awe, provoking skepticism, and keeping humanity perpetually searching for answers. And perhaps that is the greatest conspiracy of all, that the shroud's greatest power lies not in its truth, but in its ambiguity, carefully preserved across centuries. So we are left to wonder, Is the Shroud of Turin a holy relic scorched into history by divine light? A medieval forgery crafted with inexplicable genius? Or something stranger still, a relic manipulated, concealed, and protected by powers that thrive in the shadows of mystery? Until the day its secrets are fully revealed, the cloth remains both an icon of faith and a puzzle of science, hovering at the threshold between miracle and deception. The secret of the Roswell crash: aliens, cover-ups, and the birth of UFO conspiracies. In the blistering summer of 1947, in the quiet desert near Roswell, New Mexico, something fell from the sky. Newspapers first reported it as a flying disc, sparking curiosity and wonder across the nation. But within a day, the story changed. Military officials declared it was nothing more than a weather balloon. What followed was not just a burial of debris, but the birth of an enduring mystery, one that would ignite the modern UFO phenomenon and inspire decades of speculation, secrecy, and suspicion. The Roswell crash is more than a single event. It is a conspiracy that reshaped how humanity views the skies above and the powers that control the truth below. The official narrative remains simple. Rancher Mac Brazel discovered strange debris on his property: foil-like material, rubber strips, sticks, and metal. Local authorities reported it as a flying saucer, only to have the military swiftly retract the claim, replacing it with the explanation of a crashed weather balloon. The wreckage was quietly collected and whisked away. End of story, or so the government insisted. But the speed and intensity of the retraction raised immediate questions. Why announce a flying disc only to reverse the statement within hours? Was it a blunder of communication or the first step in a calculated cover-up? Eyewitnesses, years later, would describe the debris in ways that challenged the official story. Some spoke of materials that were impossibly light yet indestructible, with strange hieroglyphic-like symbols etched into beams. Others claimed bodies were recovered, small humanoid figures not of this world, swiftly taken to military bases for study. Former intelligence officers hinted at something extraordinary being hidden, while locals whispered of sealed coffins, guarded convoys, and intimidation by authorities to silence those who saw too much. Were these mere fabrications, memories distorted by time, or fragments of truth suppressed by fear? In 1994, nearly half a century later, the U.S. Air Force admitted that the weather balloon story was indeed false, but replaced it with a new explanation. The wreckage, they said, came from Project Mogul, a top-secret program using high-altitude balloons designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Conveniently, this explanation accounted for unusual debris without invoking extraterrestrials. Yet skeptics argue that even Project Mogul fails to explain eyewitness reports of bodies or the peculiar properties of the materials described. Was the shift from balloon to Mogul another layer of obfuscation, a way to protect secrets deeper still? The Roswell crash unfolded at a pivotal moment in history. The world was fresh from the devastation of World War II. The atomic age had dawned, and the Cold War was tightening its grip. Military secrecy was paramount. But what if Roswell revealed not just foreign technology, but alien? To admit such a truth could have shattered public confidence, destabilized religion, and sparked panic. Some believe the government chose silence not only to preserve order, but to harness the technology for itself, reverse engineering alien craft to fuel advancements in aerospace, stealth, and weaponry. Could the leaps in technology during the late 20th century, microchips, fiber optics, night vision, stealth fighters, be echoes of secret harvested from Roswell's wreckage? The conspiracy deepens with the rise of Area 51, the infamous Nevada base shrouded in secrecy, long suspected of housing alien technology and craft. Whistleblowers like Bob Lazar claim to have worked on reverse engineering extraterrestrial vehicles there, describing propulsion systems powered by elements unknown at the time. Though ridiculed, some of his claims gained credibility years later when details he revealed were confirmed by declassified documents. Was Roswell the spark that fed the black projects hidden in the desert, where humanity tinkers with machines from beyond the stars? What is perhaps most telling is the government's behavior. For decades, UFO sightings were dismissed, mocked, or ridiculed. Witnesses were painted as cranks, and evidence was buried under layers of secrecy. Yet in recent years, the U.S. military has quietly acknowledged the reality of unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, releasing footage of objects defying physics and admitting they cannot explain them. If such objects exist today, could Roswell have been their earthly introduction? And if so, why has the truth been withheld for so long? Some theorists believe the answer lies not in fear of panic, but in control. If alien technology was recovered, its potential for limitless energy, advanced propulsion, or even weaponry would be too valuable to share. By monopolizing such knowledge, governments or hidden elites could secure power beyond imagination. Others suggest darker motives, that contact with extraterrestrials had already been established, and Roswell was merely one incident in a secret collaboration between humans and beings beyond Earth. Were the aliens recovered at Roswell visitors, or were they engineered, biological constructs designed to pilot craft, part of a larger agenda hidden from the public? The Roswell incident also intertwines with cultural shifts. After 1947, UFO sightings skyrocketed, alien abduction stories multiplied, and pop culture became saturated with extraterrestrial themes. Was this coincidence or a deliberate conditioning, subtle disclosure through media, preparing humanity for a truth too overwhelming to reveal all at once? If so, Roswell was the opening chapter in a narrative still unfolding, drip-fed to the public in fragments to acclimate us to the unimaginable. To this day, the desert sands of Roswell whisper with unanswered questions. Ranchers, soldiers, scientists, and civilians all left testimonies, fragments of a puzzle the government insists does not exist. The debris is gone, the bodies, if they existed, hidden away, and the files either destroyed or buried under national security. Yet the allure of Roswell endures because it represents more than a crash. It represents the possibility that we are not alone, and that the truth of that encounter has been hidden not for our protection, but for the ambitions of those who govern the shadows. Perhaps the real conspiracy of Roswell is not whether aliens visited, but whether humanity has already stepped onto a path of secret collaboration with forces from beyond, a path that the public remains blind to. In the quiet desert night, one cannot help but wonder, what exactly fell from the sky in 1947, and why, after all these decades, does the truth remain untold? The death of Princess Diana. Accident or orchestrated elimination? On the night of August 31, 1997, beneath the glittering lights of Paris, a black Mercedes roared through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel and into history. When it emerged, its wreckage carried not only the bodies of Dodi Fayed and Henry Paul, but also the most beloved woman of the modern age, Princess Diana. Officially, the story was clear: a tragic car accident caused by high speed, paparazzi pursuit, and an intoxicated driver. Yet almost immediately, the world refused to accept the simplicity of the explanation. Diana's life, so steeped in public adoration and royal scandal, could hardly end so mundanely. For many, her death was not an accident, but an assassination, an orchestrated removal of a figure too dangerous, too rebellious, and too free-spirited for the establishment she had once married into. To understand the conspiracy, one must return to Diana's tumultuous years within the British royal family. Her marriage to Prince Charles had disintegrated publicly, plagued by affairs, accusations, and bitter revelations. Diana herself admitted to feeling isolated, betrayed, and manipulated by the firm, the term she used for the monarchy's shadowy machinery of control. In a 1995 BBC interview, she spoke of how powerful forces within the institution sought to silence her, famously stating, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." After her divorce, Diana seemed poised to redefine her life. No longer bound by the palace, she had become a global humanitarian icon, a voice for the voiceless, a people's princess who wielded influence rivaling, if not surpassing, the crown itself. And then came Dodi Fayed. Son of billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed, Dodi was not merely a companion, but a potential future husband. Rumors swirled that Diana and Dodi were on the brink of engagement, that she was pregnant, and that the royal family faced the unthinkable prospect of the mother of a future king marrying a Muslim man. For traditionalists and protectors of the monarchy, such a union was not only scandalous, it was catastrophic. Could Diana's romance with Dodi have sealed her fate? The circumstances of the crash are riddled with anomalies. Henri Paul, the driver, was later declared intoxicated, yet questions remain about his blood tests, which showed strange inconsistencies. Surveillance cameras along the tunnel route were inexplicably non-functional that night, leaving a void in the timeline of events. Witnesses reported seeing flashes of light, possibly from a camera or strobe, that may have disoriented the driver just before the crash. A mysterious white Fiat Uno, spotted near the scene, vanished from the investigation, never identified or accounted for. And most damning of all, Diana's emergency treatment appeared shockingly delayed. Instead of being rushed immediately to the nearest hospital, she was subjected to prolonged on-site medical procedures, only to arrive at the hospital over an hour later. Was this incompetence or deliberate negligence designed to ensure she never survived? Mohammed Al-Fayed became one of the most vocal proponents of conspiracy, insisting his son and Diana were murdered in a plot involving British intelligence, orchestrated to prevent the royal family from being connected by marriage to his Egyptian lineage. His claims were dismissed by many as grief-driven fantasy, yet the sheer number of unanswered questions refused to fade. Could MI6 or other agencies have orchestrated the crash, using the chaos of paparazzi as cover for a precision strike disguised as tragedy? Some former intelligence officers even testified that similar methods, using blinding lights to cause vehicular accidents, had been proposed in covert operations. Adding fuel to suspicion are Diana's own chilling words. In letters written before her death, she expressed fears that they were planning to stage her death in a car accident, describing a brake failure or crash as the likely method. If this was mere paranoia, it is uncanny in its accuracy. If it was genuine foreknowledge, then her death takes on the aura of a prophecy fulfilled by design. Did Diana know too much, or was she silenced before she could step beyond the reach of the monarchy? The official inquiries have done little to dispel the shadows. French investigations ruled the crash an accident. A later British inquiry, Operation Paget, entertained conspiracy claims but ultimately upheld the accident conclusion. Yet skeptics point out that both investigations leaned heavily on selective evidence, dismissed witness contradictions, and avoided deeper scrutiny of royal and intelligence connections. To conspiracists, this was the cover-up in plain sight, an official truth polished and presented to the world, while the real truth remained hidden in the corridors of power. Beyond the mechanics of the crash lies the greater question: why would Diana be targeted? Some argue her humanitarian campaigns posed a threat to powerful interests. She had publicly campaigned against landmines, challenging governments and arms manufacturers alike. She had threatened to reveal secrets about the royal family, hinting at scandals too dangerous to expose. She had become, in essence, a free agent of influence, a global figure who could sway opinion and policy outside the reach of official channels. For monarchies, governments, and industries alike, Diana was no longer a vulnerable princess. She was a dangerous icon. Even now, decades later, Diana's death continues to inspire suspicion because it represents more than a tragedy. It represents the idea that no matter how beloved, no matter how powerful, an individual who threatens entrenched systems can be erased under the guise of fate.
Her story has become entwined with the broader narrative of hidden powers manipulating history, a reminder that the most visible figures often dance on strings pulled from the shadows. As flowers still gather each year at the gates of Kensington Palace, and as her sons carry her legacy forward, the question remains: did Diana truly die in an accident, or was she silenced by forces too fearful of what she might become? Perhaps the truth lies forever entombed within the silence of the Alma Tunnel, a silence that echoes with conspiracy, suspicion, and the chilling possibility that the People's Princess was stolen from the people by design. The mystery of the Knights Templar, guardians of secrets, or victims of a conspiracy. In the annals of medieval Europe, few names evoke as much awe and suspicion as the Knights Templar. Cloaked in white mantles marked by the Crimson Cross, they were warrior monks who fought in the Crusades, defended pilgrims, and grew into one of the most powerful and enigmatic organizations the world had ever seen. Yet their abrupt fall in the early 14th century, accused of heresy, blasphemy, and secret rites, still reeks of conspiracy. Were the Templars truly guilty of sinister practices, or were they destroyed because they guarded truths too dangerous for kings and popes to allow? The Templars' rise was meteoric. Founded around 1119, they began as a small brotherhood tasked with protecting travelers in the Holy Land. But within decades, they evolved into an elite military force and financial powerhouse. They pioneered early forms of banking, allowing nobles to deposit wealth in one kingdom and withdraw it in another, creating a network that rivaled even royal treasuries. Their castles dotted Europe and the Middle East, their fleets dominated seas, and their influence touched popes and monarchs alike. This combination of martial might and financial acumen made them indispensable and threatening. Their secretive nature only fueled suspicion. The Templars held closed initiations, swore oaths of absolute loyalty, and kept much of their inner workings hidden from the outside world. Rumors grew of bizarre rituals, spitting on the cross, kissing strange body parts, worshiping a mysterious idol called Baphomet. Some claimed they practiced occult rites, blending Christianity with forbidden knowledge, while others believed they had uncovered ancient relics in Jerusalem, perhaps even the Holy Grail itself, or the Ark of the Covenant. Did the Templars stumble upon truths buried beneath Solomon's temple, truths that challenged the very foundations of church and crown? Their downfall came abruptly in 1307. King Philip IV of France, deeply indebted to the Templars, conspired with Pope Clement V to destroy them. On Friday, October 13, a date that would echo into superstition, Templars across France were arrested, tortured, and coerced into confessions of heresy. Many were burned at the stake, including the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, who, as flames consumed him, is said to have cursed both the Pope and kin, foretelling their deaths within the year. A prophecy that chillingly came true. To the victors, the Templar sins justified their eradication. But to others, this was not justice, but conspiracy. A calculated move by a king to erase his debts and a church to crush an order that had grown too powerful, too independent, and perhaps too knowing. What became of the Templars' vast wealth remains a mystery. Treasure is said to have vanished overnight, whisked away by fleets that disappeared into the seas. Legends claim that surviving Templars fled to Scotland, where they aided Robert the Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn, their phantom cavalry turning the tide. Others whisper of Templar descendants who seeded secret societies, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, even shadowy orders that still pull strings in the modern world. Could the Templars have transformed from knights to hidden custodians of ancient knowledge, carrying their mysteries into the future under new banners? The conspiracy surrounding their supposed idol Baphomet is equally tantalizing. Was it truly a devil figure or a symbol misunderstood by their enemies? Some scholars suggest it may have been a corruption of Muhammad, accusing the Templars of adopting Islamic practices. Others see it as an esoteric symbol of wisdom, connected to Gnostic traditions. Still others link it to alchemical secrets, hidden codes, or even relics tied to extraterrestrial visitors, a theory that merges the Templars with broader conspiracies of forbidden knowledge. Modern theorists often connect the Templars to the Holy Grail. Their presence in Jerusalem, their excavations around the Temple Mount, and their secretive rituals all fuel speculation that they discovered relics of Christ, perhaps even bloodline secrets suggesting Jesus survived crucifixion and fathered descendants. If so, the Templars may have been destroyed not for heresy, but for guarding truths that threatened the Church's monopoly on spiritual authority. Could the Vatican's role in their destruction be seen not merely as cooperation with a king, but as silencing those who held the ultimate revelation? What makes the Templar conspiracy endure is its duality. On one hand, they may have been innocent victims, heroes brought low by greed and fear. On the other, they may indeed have dabbled in forbidden rites, holding secrets too profound for the medieval world to endure. Whether protectors of Christ's legacy, guardians of hidden treasures, or precursors to shadowy societies that shape history, the Templars refuse to vanish into obscurity. Their destruction may have been a victory for kings and popes, but it also birthed legends that have grown only stronger with time. Even today, the Templars haunt our imagination. Their symbols echo in architecture, in Masonic lodges, and in tales of secret vaults beneath cathedrals. Their name is invoked in novels, films, and whispers of hidden power. And in every shadowed corner of history where conspiracies lurk, the Templars seem to reappear, as if their order never truly died but only retreated deeper into secrecy. Were they erased, or did they become immortal through conspiracy itself? Perhaps the greatest mystery of the Knights Templar is not whether they were guilty, but what they were guilty of. Did they guard the Grail? Did they defy the Church with knowledge too dangerous to reveal? Or were they merely pawns crushed by greed and fear, their legend growing precisely because their truth was silenced? The flames that consumed Jacques de Molay may have turned the Templars to ash, but the smoke still lingers, carrying whispers of a conspiracy that may be as real as the crimson crosses they bore into battle. The Philadelphia Experiment, Vanishing Ships, Warped Reality, and the Navy's Hidden Science. In the thick of World War II, as nations raced to weaponize science, a story emerged that seemed less like history and more like nightmare. It was whispered that in October 1943, the U.S. Navy conducted a secret experiment at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, an experiment so bizarre it pushed the boundaries of physics, reality, and human sanity. The USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort, was said to have been rendered invisible, not only to radar but to the naked eye. And in that moment, a conspiracy was born, an enduring legend of military hubris, government secrecy, and a possible brush with powers mankind was never meant to wield. The tale first reached the public through letters sent to UFO researcher Morris K. Jessup in the 1950s by a mysterious figure known only as Carlos Allende, sometimes Carl Allen. Allende claimed to have witnessed the experiment firsthand. According to him, the Eldridge was enveloped in a strange green haze before disappearing entirely from Philadelphia, only to reappear seconds later in Norfolk, Virginia, over 200 miles away. In those moments, the ship had supposedly teleported, bending space and time itself. Yet the triumph, if true, came at a horrifying cost. Sailors were said to have suffered gruesome fates, some burned, others fused into the ship's bulkheads, their bodies grotesquely merged with steel. Still others went mad, never recovering from what they had seen. Was this science gone wrong, or a tale spun from fear and imagination? The official line from the Navy has always been clear: the Philadelphia experiment never happened. The USS Eldridge, they insist, was never in Philadelphia on the dates in question, and the story is nothing more than myth. But skeptics point to oddities that refuse to be ignored. Records show that the Eldridge was equipped with unusual degaussing technology, intended to make ships invisible to magnetic mines, which could have been mistaken for something far more radical. Witnesses outside the Navy claimed to see ships vanish or blink from sight. And if the experiment was classified, would official records ever confirm the truth?
The science behind the conspiracy is equally unsettling. Theories suggest the Navy was attempting to exploit Einstein's unified field theory, a hypothetical framework connecting electromagnetism and gravity. By creating massive electromagnetic fields around the Eldridge, they may have hoped to bend light around it, achieving true invisibility. But what if they succeeded beyond their intent? Could they have momentarily opened a rift in space-time, hurling the vessel into dimensions uncharted? If so, the sailors' horrific conditions may have been not myth, but side effects of human bodies torn between realities. Adding to the intrigue is the web of connections to later projects. Some claim the Philadelphia experiment was a precursor to the infamous Montauk Project, a supposed series of mind control and time travel experiments conducted on Long Island decades later. Allegedly, technology tested on the Eldridge was refined and weaponized in secret, hidden from public view, but driving the U.S. into realms of physics still unacknowledged. Could the government have buried evidence of a catastrophic success, not to protect citizens from panic, but to monopolize knowledge that could reshape the world? Eyewitness accounts, though contradictory, are chilling. Some former sailors swore the story was true, recounting shipmates vanishing before their eyes. Others dismissed it as a sailor's myth. But conspiracists argue the contradictions themselves are evidence of a cover-up. Memories tampered with, testimonies silenced, documents destroyed. If the experiment was a disaster, the Navy had every reason to erase its existence. Yet rumors spread through ports and naval communities, carried like ghost stories that refused to die. Even stranger are claims that the experiment altered not just space but time. Some sailors allegedly phased in and out of existence for weeks after, disappearing in public only to reappear moments later. Others reported bizarre physical symptoms, illness, disorientation, and the eerie sensation of not being entirely tethered to the world. A few accounts suggest men were literally lost, never seen again, as though they slipped permanently into another dimension. Could the Philadelphia experiment have opened a doorway that some never returned from?
The allure of the story lies not only in its horror, but in its possibility. During the 1940s, military science was accelerating at a dizzying pace. The Manhattan Project had transformed theoretical physics into the atomic bomb. Radar, sonar, and rockets were advancing rapidly. Is it so unthinkable that the Navy, desperate for an advantage, might gamble on untested theories? The experiment's secrecy, if true, would have been as vital as the bomb, perhaps even more so. A ship that could vanish from detection would have been the ultimate weapon of war. But if the experiment spiraled into catastrophe, suppressing it would have been just as urgent. What makes the Philadelphia experiment endure is not proof, but absence. Absence of records, absence of credible debunking, absence of a clean narrative that explains away the whispers. Instead, the legend survives in the cracks. Letters from a mysterious witness, rumors from sailors, anomalies in naval documents, and the very refusal of authorities to even entertain the discussion. In those silences, conspiracists hear the echo of truth. Perhaps the most unsettling question is not whether the Eldridge vanished, but what became of the knowledge if it did. Did the Navy abandon such dangerous science, or did they perfect it in the shadows, hidden beneath the veil of black projects? If invisibility, teleportation, or time manipulation were achieved, even in primitive form, the ramifications would be beyond comprehension. Entire wars could be fought unseen, civilizations manipulated without their knowledge, history rewritten by those who control reality itself. Today, the USS Eldridge is gone, transferred to the Greek Navy in the 1950s and eventually scrapped. But its legend endures, an invisible ghost haunting history's margins. Sailors whisper, theorists speculate, and the public wonders if, beneath the official denials, lies the greatest scientific breakthrough and disaster of the 20th century. If the Philadelphia experiment was real, it was more than an accident. It was a glimpse into forbidden science, a tearing of the veil between worlds that governments have hidden ever since. Perhaps, as some suggest, the green haze that enveloped the eldritch was not merely energy, but revelation, proof that humanity could step beyond its limits, if only it dared. Yet for those who vanished, who burned, who fused with steel, the price was unbearable. And so the truth remains buried, the experiment reduced to myth, though its shadow still lingers on the edges of conspiracy. A ship that sailed too far into the unknown, and a government that decided mankind was not ready to know what it had seen.
The assassination of John F. Kennedy, lone gunman or hidden coup? On November 22, 1963, shots rang out in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, and the world froze. President John F. Kennedy slumped forward in his limousine, mortally wounded. By evening, Lee Harvey Oswald was declared the assassin, arrested in a theater after denying the charges with the now legendary words, "I'm just a patsy." Days later, Oswald himself was gunned down by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, live on television, silencing him forever. Officially, the Warren Commission concluded that Oswald acted alone. Yet from the very moment of the assassination, millions have suspected something deeper. That Kennedy's death was not the act of a lone gunman, but a meticulously orchestrated coup, a conspiracy that reshaped the destiny of a nation. The evidence that fuels suspicion begins with the shots themselves. Witnesses reported gunfire not just from the Texas School Book Depository, where Oswald supposedly perched, but also from the infamous grassy knoll. Zapruder's home movie, capturing the brutal moment of Kennedy's head snapping backward, seemed to contradict the official trajectory of bullets. The magic bullet theory, claiming a single round caused multiple wounds to both Kennedy and Governor John Connally, stretches physics to the point of absurdity. For many, the Warren Commission's conclusions read less like truth and more like a desperate attempt to seal a narrative before too many cracks appeared. But why kill Kennedy? Conspiracies abound, each pointing to enemies made in his short but transformative presidency. Some argue the CIA feared Kennedy's growing skepticism of their covert operations after the Bay of Pigs disaster. Others believe the military-industrial complex, furious at Kennedy's reluctance to escalate the Vietnam War, saw him as an obstacle to profit and power. The Mafia, threatened by his brother Robert's crusade against organized crime, had motive and means. Even whispers of Cuban involvement persist, suggesting Fidel Castro sought revenge for U.S. assassination plots. In each thread, Kennedy's vision of a different America, less militaristic, less secretive, more open to peace, appears as the very reason he became a target. Lee Harvey Oswald himself remains a riddle. A former Marine who defected to the Soviet Union only to return with ease, he seemed entangled in intelligence webs too complex for an ordinary drifter. His associations with pro-Castro and anti-Castro groups alike hint at manipulation, as if he were being maneuvered into a role long before Dealey Plaza. Was Oswald truly the gunman, or was he set up to take the fall, his guilt preordained by forces far beyond his control? His death at the hands of Jack Ruby, another man with shadowy ties to organized crime, feels less like coincidence and more like cleanup. The cover-up, if it existed, was subtle but deliberate. Key witnesses were ignored or silenced, contradictory testimonies dismissed, and crucial evidence sealed away. The Warren report presented a tidy answer, but its omissions spoke louder than its conclusions. When the House Select Committee on Assassinations revisited the case in the 1970s, it concluded that Kennedy was probably assassinated as the result of a conspiracy, though it failed to identify the conspirators. In that ambiguous phrase, probably, the door to speculation was left permanently ajar. Then came the withheld files. For decades, the U.S. government kept thousands of documents sealed, fueling suspicion that the truth lay buried within classified pages. Each time a new batch was declassified, tantalizing hints emerged, but no definitive closure. Even in the 21st century, presidents have delayed full disclosure, citing national security. What secrets could possibly remain so dangerous half a century later that they must still be hidden? Perhaps the answer is simple. The conspiracy, if real, reached into the highest levels of power, implicating institutions that still shape the nation.
The deeper conspiracy theories suggest Kennedy's death was not just about one man, but about a vision of the world. Kennedy had spoken of breaking the CIA into 1,000 pieces, of ending the Cold War's most perilous escalations, of curbing nuclear proliferation. He had begun secret communications with Castro, considered withdrawing troops from Vietnam, and resisted Hawke's urging confrontation with the Soviet Union. If Kennedy lived, perhaps the Cold War might have thawed earlier. Perhaps the 1960s would not have drowned in blood and division. To those invested in perpetual conflict, Kennedy's vision was intolerable. His death ensured that the machinery of war continued to grind. The conspiracy endures because of its human core, the haunting sense that the brightest hope of a generation was extinguished by forces too shadowy to confront. Kennedy's death marked a turning point where trust in government began to erode, where the gap between official stories and public belief widened into a chasm. Each anniversary draws crowds to Dealey Plaza, not merely to mourn, but to question. They stand on the grassy knoll, gaze at the sixth-floor window, and wonder who truly pulled the strings on that day of infamy. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of the Kennedy assassination is not only the loss of a leader, but the loss of certainty. Did Oswald act alone? Was there a second gunman? Were agencies, mobs, or governments complicit? Or was it a perfect storm of paranoia, greed, and secrecy that left the truth buried beneath layers of lies? Each theory, each contradiction deepens the mystery, making Dealey Plaza less a crime scene and more a labyrinth without exit. And so the question lingers, unsilenced by decades. Was Kennedy's death the act of a lone drifter with a rifle, or was it the single most profound conspiracy in American history? A coup executed in broad daylight, its truth hidden in plain sight. Until every file is opened, every voice heard, and every silence broken, the echoes of November 22, 1963 will continue to haunt the American soul, a riddle etched in gunfire, shadows, and betrayal. The mystery of the Georgia Guidestones, blueprint for a new world order? On a quiet hill in Elbert County, Georgia in 1980, a monument unlike any other was unveiled. Towering granite slabs, arranged in a cross formation, stood over 19 feet tall, carved with inscriptions in 8 modern languages and 4 ancient scripts. The message was chillingly clear, etched for all humanity to see. 10 guidelines for a new age, a set of commandments for civilization itself. They called for global unity, population control, harmony with nature, and the abandonment of nationalism. The monument became known as the Georgia Guidestones. To some, it was a beacon of wisdom, a call to survival in an age of chaos. To others, it was the smoking gun of a conspiracy, the manifesto of shadowy elites plotting to reshape the world under a new world order. The mystery began with their origin. The stones were commissioned by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a small group of loyal Americans. His true identity was never revealed. Local contractors who built the monument recalled his secrecy and insistence on anonymity. Once completed, R.C. Christian vanished from history, leaving only the Guidestones and their cryptic message behind. Who was he? Was he a wealthy eccentric, a front for powerful organizations, or perhaps a symbolic figure chosen by a secret society like the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, or even a cabal that saw itself as guardians of humanity's future? The inscriptions themselves fuel the conspiracy. The first and most infamous guideline declares, "Maintain humanity under 500,000 in perpetual balance with nature." To critics, this was a blatant endorsement of global depopulation, implying that over 90% of humanity must vanish for the vision to succeed. Was this a prophecy of natural disaster or a plan for engineered catastrophe? Other commandments called for a single world language, the unification of humanity under just laws, and the guiding of reproduction with fitness and diversity. To many, this read less like wisdom and more like social engineering on a planetary scale. Were these stones a manifesto for eugenics, control, and domination dressed as idealism?
The location added to the enigma. Elbert County, known as the granite capital of the world, offered material durability, but why this isolated rural hill? Some believe the site was chosen for its ley lines, mystical alignments of energy across the earth. Others see it as a symbolic act to plant the seed of global governance in the heart of America, far from centers of power, where it would stand quietly until the day it became relevant. The Guidestones were not merely philosophical. Their design included astronomical features, apertures aligned to track the sun, moon, and stars, serving as a calendar and compass. In the event of global catastrophe, the monument could function as a survival tool, guiding future generations. Was this the true intent? A message to survivors of a nuclear war, offering them principles to rebuild civilization? Or was it part of a darker agenda, built not to warn, but to declare ownership of the future? Conspiracists connected the Guidestones to the growing fear of global elites and secret societies. In the 1980s, whispers of the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, and Illuminati filled underground literature. To them, the stones were no random monument, but a declaration of intent, a visible, permanent symbol of plans for a one-world government, a controlled population, and centralized authority. The anonymity of R.C. Christian only deepened suspicion, his initials conveniently echoing secret orders like the Rosicrucians. In later years, the Guidestones became a magnet for paranoia, vandalism, and prophecy. Some called them the American Stonehenge, others the Ten Commandments of the Antichrist. Preachers railed against their apparent satanic undertones. Activists claimed they foreshadowed mass depopulation events, pandemics, or engineered crises. Each new global disaster, from 9/11 to COVID-19, breathed new life into the conspiracy, with many insisting the Guidestones were not warnings but instructions being followed by the powerful. And then, in July 2022, the mystery took a darker turn. An explosion shattered part of the monument, and days later the remains were demolished entirely. Officially, the destruction was blamed on unknown vandals. Yet the timing, amid renewed debates about global governance, pandemics, and depopulation, sparked fresh speculation. Was the monument destroyed by extremists who saw it as evil, or by those who had once erected it, erasing evidence before the message drew too much scrutiny? In its destruction, the Guidestones became more enigmatic than ever, transformed from a tangible riddle to a ghostly legend. The conspiracy endures because the Guidestones represent both fear and fascination. If they were a sincere attempt to preserve wisdom for future generations, they may be one of the most misunderstood monuments in history. But if they were indeed the manifesto of hidden powers, they reveal a chilling truth, that the future of humanity may already have been written in stone by hands that never revealed themselves. Even now, when nothing remains but rubble and memory, the Guidestones haunt conspiracy lore. Were they a warning, a prophecy, or a plan? And if they were a plan, who are the architects, and what steps are already in motion to see it fulfilled? The answers may lie not in Elbert County's fields, but in boardrooms, summits, and secret chambers where the fate of billions is quietly decided. Perhaps the most unsettling thought is this: monuments are built to last, but ideas survive even their destruction. The Georgia Guidestones may be gone, but their message endures, etched not only in granite, but in the imaginations of those who fear that the world's future is not in the hands of the many, but in the grip of the few. The mystery of Shakespeare's true identity. Was the bard a mask for hidden authors? The works of William Shakespeare, those timeless plays and sonnets that shaped English literature, have been celebrated for centuries as the genius of one man, a humble actor from Stratford-upon-Avon. But beneath the reverence lies one of history's most enduring conspiracies. Was Shakespeare really the author of the masterpieces attributed to him? Or was his name a mask for hidden figures, perhaps even a cabal of writers whose identities remain shrouded in secrecy? To ask the question is to open a door into a labyrinth where literature, politics, and coded messages intertwine. The conspiracy begins with Shakespeare's own biography, which seems oddly thin for a man of such staggering brilliance. Born in 1564, he was the son of a glovemaker, attended a modest local grammar school, and vanished from the record for several years in his youth. By the time he reappeared, he was suddenly in London, an actor and playwright of remarkable depth, writing with a mastery of law, medicine, classical literature, and courtly politics. How, skeptics ask, could a man of such humble origins possess knowledge so vast and precise, knowledge seemingly reserved for the educated elite? Doubts have existed since the 17th century, but they gained momentum in the 19th and 20th centuries. The so-called anti-Stratfordians suggest that Shakespeare was little more than a front, a name used to publish works too politically dangerous or socially controversial to be safely attributed to their true authors. But who could those true authors have been? The theories are many, and each carries its own shadow of mystery. One candidate is Sir Francis Bacon, philosopher, scientist, and court insider. Bacon's intellectual range, mastery of rhetoric, and known involvement in secret societies like the Rosicrucians make him a compelling suspect. Supporters of the Baconian theory point to hidden ciphers embedded in the plays, acrostics, numerical codes, and cryptic references that supposedly reveal Bacon's authorship. They argue that the plays were not only works of art, but instruments of esoteric knowledge, and coded with wisdom meant for those initiated into hidden traditions. Another leading candidate is Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. A courtier, poet, and dramatist, de Vere had the education, the political experience, and the literary flair to produce Shakespeare's works. Advocates of the Oxfordian theory claim that his aristocratic standing prevented him from publishing plays under his own name, as it would have been seen as beneath his dignity. Shakespeare, a convenient and relatively obscure figure, could have served as the perfect mask. The Oxfordians note curious parallels between de Vere's life and events in the plays, as though the works are veiled autobiographies. Some go further, suggesting the works were the product not of one man, but of a secret collective, a syndicate of writers working in the shadows. Perhaps it was a cabal tied to intelligence networks like Sir Francis Walsingham's spy ring, embedding political commentary and coded messages into the plays to influence public opinion. Or perhaps the plays were the work of Rosicrucians or Freemasons, cloaking their philosophy in drama to ensure its survival through the ages. The plays themselves are filled with mysteries that fuel such speculation. Why, for example, do certain works contain cryptic references to events that occurred after Shakespeare's supposed authorship? Why do legal and political details align so perfectly with the knowledge of court insiders? Why are there mathematical structures and allegories within the sonnets that appear to follow esoteric patterns? To the conspiracy-minded, these are not coincidences, but clues left deliberately by the true authors, daring us to uncover them. Even Shakespeare's name adds to the enigma. Some theorists argue that Shakespeare is itself a pseudonym, a symbolic title meaning to shake a spear in service of Pallas Athena, goddess of wisdom and protector of hidden truth. If so, then the man from Stratford may have been no more than a convenient figurehead, a mask behind which hidden knowledge was safely projected. The controversy grew darker with the discovery of supposed lost manuscripts and claims of forged documents. In the 19th century, for example, William Henry Ireland presented what he claimed were original Shakespearean manuscripts, only for them to be exposed as forgeries. Yet even in their debunking, such episodes added fuel to the belief that real manuscripts, long hidden, might still exist in secret archives, suppressed by institutions determined to maintain the Stratfordian myth.
Why would such a conspiracy matter? Because the plays themselves wield extraordinary power. They are not just stories, they are mirrors of human ambition, corruption, tyranny, and rebellion. In Elizabethan England, where politics and theater were inseparably intertwined, such works could influence thought, question authority, and even ignite revolution. To cloak their authorship in anonymity was not simply an artistic choice. It was a necessity for survival. The wrong word could mean imprisonment or execution. A mask like William Shakespeare may have been the only way to let truth be spoken safely. Even today, institutions fiercely defend the Stratfordian narrative, dismissing alternate theories as fringe speculation. But why such resistance? Why the need to protect the image of the humble bard at all costs? Could it be that the truth, if revealed, would upend centuries of cultural heritage and expose how deeply literature has been manipulated by hidden hands? Or worse, that the works of Shakespeare were never mere entertainment, but a coded blueprint for humanity, preserved by secret societies across the ages? The mystery of Shakespeare's authorship remains unsolved, and perhaps it always will. But the conspiracy endures because it whispers a deeper truth, that history, art, and identity are not always what they seem. Behind the curtain of the Globe Theatre may lie not just a playwright, but a network of hidden minds, their voices echoing through time under a single borrowed name. The greatest plays of all may not be those performed on stage, but the invisible drama of history itself, where masks conceal truths, names become symbols, and words carry secrets meant only for those willing to see them.
The Voynich Manuscript, a book written in an unbreakable code? Hidden in the vaults of Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library rests one of history's most beguiling riddles, a book filled with strange symbols, indecipherable writing, and illustrations of plants, stars, and naked women bathing in pools connected by impossible plumbing. Known as the Voynich Manuscript, this artifact has defied scholars, cryptographers, and codebreakers for centuries. Some call it the most mysterious book in the world. Others whisper it is not merely a puzzle of language, but a relic of forbidden knowledge, deliberately concealed in an unbreakable code. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912. But its origins stretch back much further. Carbon dating places its creation in the early 15th century during the European Renaissance, a time when alchemists sought eternal life, scholars pursued hidden truths, and secret societies thrived in the shadows. Yet no record of the manuscript exists before its sudden appearance in the collection of Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire, who reportedly believed it to be the work of Roger Bacon, the medieval friar rumored to dabble in forbidden sciences. Why would an emperor pay a fortune for a book no one could read unless it held the promise of unimaginable power? Its pages are filled with text written in an unknown script, composed of flowing characters unlike any known alphabet. The writing seems structured, with grammar and repetition suggesting it encodes a real language. And yet, despite the efforts of some of the world's greatest codebreakers, including those who cracked the Enigma machine in World War II, the text has never been conclusively deciphered. Was it written in a lost tongue, an elaborate cipher, or something beyond language itself? The illustrations deepen the enigma. Plants that do not exist in nature, hybrids of familiar herbs with alien forms, suggest knowledge of flora from another world or age. Astronomical diagrams depict unfamiliar constellations and celestial mechanics, as if drawn from a cosmology outside our own. Even more curious are the so-called balneological sections, naked women immersed in interconnected pools, surrounded by strange tubes and vessels, as though participating in rituals of purification or perhaps experiments in alchemy, medicine, or fertility.
Could these images hint at secret practices preserved only in this coded book? Theories abound. Some argue the manuscript is an elaborate hoax, a meaningless jumble designed to fool wealthy collectors. Yet statistical analysis of the text reveals patterns consistent with natural languages, too complex for mere gibberish. Others suggest it is a medical text, written in a lost dialect, encoding knowledge of herbs and treatments. But why cloak such knowledge in secrecy unless it was forbidden or dangerous? A more chilling theory is that the manuscript is a repository of esoteric wisdom, alchemy, astrology, and the occult, deliberately hidden from prying eyes. In this view, the Voynich manuscript may not be meant for everyone, but only for initiates of a secret order. Perhaps its script is not meant to be deciphered in the conventional sense, but understood only by those who possess the key, a key passed down through generations of hidden societies. Was it a manual for transmutation, eternal youth, or even communication with other realms? Some cryptographers propose the manuscript uses an advanced form of steganography, embedding information through patterns invisible to the casual reader. Could its meaning lie not in the words themselves, but in the frequency, structure, or even the placement of the images? Others go further still, suggesting the book encodes not human knowledge, but alien intelligence. The plants that do not exist on Earth, the stars that do not align with our heavens, are these glimpses of another world preserved in ink and parchment centuries before humanity spoke of extraterrestrials? The conspiracy thickens with whispers of suppression. If modern cryptographers have indeed cracked fragments of the code, why are their findings never publicly revealed? Some suspect institutions guard the truth, afraid of what the book contains. A formula for unimaginable power? A prophecy? A revelation that could upend history? Or perhaps the manuscript's very mystery is its protection, its knowledge safely locked away because the world is not ready to receive it. What unsettles scholars most is the possibility that the manuscript's code is unbreakable. If it was crafted not with letters, but with thought patterns, symbols meant to engage the mind in ways beyond ordinary comprehension, then perhaps it was never meant to be read, but to transform. Each failed attempt at translation, every frustrated scholar may be fulfilling its hidden function, to lure seekers into obsession, bending their lives around its orbit, as though the manuscript itself were alive, feeding on curiosity. Centuries have passed, and still the Voynich manuscript resists. It remains an open wound in the body of knowledge, a book that whispers but never speaks, a voice caught in a language without a key. Is it a hoax, a miracle, a secret manual of forgotten science, or a message from beyond? The truth may be more unsettling still, that the Voynich manuscript was written not for us, not for our time, but for another era entirely. Perhaps its readers have not yet been born. Perhaps the world it describes has not yet come into being. And so it waits, locked in silence, daring us to believe that history itself contains truths that are never meant to be unveiled. Truths preserved in ink that mocks the limits of human understanding. The book may be paper and parchment, but the conspiracy it embodies is eternal. That there exists knowledge so dangerous, so transformative, that it must forever remain in code. The secret of the Knights Templar, guardians of forbidden knowledge? Few names in history carry such a weight of mystery as the Knights Templar. Formed in the 12th century as warrior monks sworn to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, they quickly became one of the most powerful organizations in medieval Europe. With vast wealth, secret rituals, and whispered connections to hidden treasures, the Templars were either the defenders of Christendom or the keepers of a secret so dangerous it threatened the very foundations of the Church. When they were suddenly betrayed and destroyed in the early 14th century, many believed their true story was buried with them, or deliberately erased. Yet the conspiracy that surrounds them endures, hinting that the Templars may have been far more than soldiers of faith. The order rose swiftly. Endorsed by the Pope, the Templars amassed lands, castles, and influence across Europe. They invented systems of finance resembling modern banking, giving them immense power. But their greatest secret, conspiracists say, lay not in gold, but in knowledge. During their time in Jerusalem, they allegedly excavated beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple, an act that gave them their name. What did they find there? Some whisper it was the Holy Grail. Others say the Ark of the Covenant. Still others claim it was forbidden texts containing ancient wisdom. Whatever it was, it transformed the order from humble monks into a force that kings and popes alike feared. Legends grew around their rituals. Initiates were said to undergo secret ceremonies involving oaths of silence, symbolic deaths and rebirths, and reverence for mysterious relics. Enemies accused them of worshiping a bearded head called Baphomet, perhaps a symbol of secret knowledge or a demon misunderstood by their persecutors. Did these accusations conceal truth, or were they fabrications by rivals eager to destroy them? By the early 1300s, the Templars had grown too powerful, too wealthy, and too independent. King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to them, turned on the order. On Friday, October 13, 1307, hundreds of Templars were arrested in a sudden purge, tortured into confessions, and executed. The order was disbanded, its assets seized. But rumors persisted that much of their treasure and their greatest secrets had been spirited away in advance. From that day forward, Friday the 13th was remembered as a day of ill omen. The question remains, what happened to the Templars' hidden knowledge? Some believe they carried their treasures to Scotland, where they influenced the birth of Freemasonry. Others claim they fled to Switzerland, establishing the banking traditions that endure to this day. Still others argue they crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus, hiding relics in the New World. Whispers link them to the enigmatic Oak Island mystery in Nova Scotia, where supposed Templar symbols have been found. The conspiracy takes on an even more mystical hue when tied to the Holy Grail. Was the Grail truly a cup, or was it secret bloodline knowledge, perhaps even proof of a lineage descending from Jesus himself? If the Templars uncovered such truths beneath Solomon's temple, it would explain the Church's determination to erase them. To protect their power, they had to silence the Templars forever. Yet the Templars did not vanish entirely. Their imagery, symbols, and alleged teachings re-emerged centuries later within Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and other secret societies. The very structure of these groups, their rituals, hierarchies, and esoteric symbolism bears uncanny resemblance to what little is known of Templar practices. Were these societies the heirs of the Templar legacy, preserving fragments of their forbidden knowledge under new guises? The most unsettling question is not what the Templars were accused of, but what they actually knew. Did they uncover truths about the origins of Christianity that the Church could never allow? Did they preserve relics with power that transcended faith and entered the realm of the supernatural? Or were they keepers of an ancient wisdom predating Christianity altogether, knowledge that, if revealed, would challenge the foundations of civilization itself? Conspiracy theorists believe that the destruction of the Templars was not the end, but a smokescreen. Their greatest treasures were hidden, their knowledge encoded into symbols and passed down through shadowy networks. Every time we see the cross and crown, the temple motif in Freemasonry, or the strange recurrence of Friday the 13th as a symbol of doom, we may be brushing against echoes of their secret survival. The Knights Templar may have vanished as an official order, but their conspiracy remains alive, pulsing through history like an underground river. Were they guardians of Christ's greatest relics, or the inheritors of knowledge too powerful for the world to bear? Their downfall may have been written in fire and blood, but their mystery endures, haunting every story of hidden treasures, lost orders, and secret societies that claim descent from a brotherhood destroyed, yet never truly gone. The Tunguska event, a cosmic warning or a hidden experiment? On the morning of June 30, 1908, in the remote Siberian wilderness near the Tunguska River, the sky exploded. A massive fireball tore across the heavens, followed by a shockwave that flattened more than 80 million trees across an area of 2,000 square kilometers. Witnesses described the sky as splitting in two, a heat so intense that it burned the skin of people standing miles away, and a shock so violent that it shattered windows hundreds of kilometers distant. The Tunguska event remains the largest explosion in recorded history not caused by humans, and yet no impact crater was ever found. For more than a century, the mystery has refused to yield to conventional explanation, and conspiracy theories swirl around it like cosmic dust. The official story has long pointed to a meteor or comet that entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded mid-air, releasing energy equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. But skeptics argue that such an explanation leaves gaps. Why was there no definitive impact site? Why were traces of cosmic material so scarce? Why did some witnesses report glowing skies for nights afterward, as though the very atmosphere had been altered? The absence of answers has fueled speculation that the Tunguska event was something far stranger, perhaps even something deliberately concealed. One of the most persistent theories is that Tunguska was not a natural event but the result of a secret experiment gone wrong. Some suggest the Russian scientist Nikola Tesla may have been involved. At the time, Tesla was experimenting with wireless energy transmission from his Wardenclyffe Tower in New York. Tesla himself hinted that his inventions could harness energies capable of devastating destruction, energy to split the Earth like an apple. Could Tunguska have been the unintended consequence of a long-distance test of directed energy, an early prototype of a death ray? If so, the explosion in the remote Siberian wilderness may have been chosen to avoid population centers, an accident cloaked forever under the guise of a meteor.
Others propose that Tunguska was no accident of science, but a clash with forces beyond Earth. The sheer scale and unusual characteristics of the explosion have led to speculation about an alien spacecraft, either crashing into Earth or deliberately self-destructing before impact. Advocates of this theory point to the reports of glowing skies and strange magnetic disturbances in the region as evidence of advanced propulsion technology. If an extraterrestrial craft did explode above Siberia, was it an accident or a warning deliberately staged where few humans would die but many would take notice? Even stranger are whispers that the Tunguska event was not an intrusion from beyond, but an intrusion from below. Some conspiracy theorists believe the blast was the result of hidden underground energy, perhaps a natural release from the Earth's core, or the awakening of ancient technologies buried deep within Siberia. Legends among the Evenki people of the region spoke of fiery gods and sky battles long before 1908, fueling speculation that Tunguska was not the first time the skies had erupted there. Could it have been the reactivation of a forgotten weapon, perhaps one left behind by an ancient civilization? Adding to the intrigue is the Soviet Union's long silence on the event. Expeditions to the site were delayed for nearly 20 years, and when researchers finally arrived, their findings only deepened the mystery. Trees lying in perfect radio patterns, scorched from above, with no crater or fragments of a meteor. Was this scientific negligence or deliberate suppression of inconvenient truths? During the Cold War, Soviet secrecy ensured that alternative theories flourished, linking Tunguska to hidden weapons research, early nuclear experiments, or cosmic events too destabilizing to admit publicly.
Even modern science has failed to close the case. While many accept the comet or meteor explanation, others argue anomalies remain unexplained. The soil shows unusual traces of rare isotopes. Local testimonies describe strange lights in the days before the explosion. Some claim the site remains magnetically anomalous even today. If it was simply a comet, why does the evidence continue to resist simplicity?
To conspiracy believers, the Tunguska event is not a mystery to be solved, but a message to be decoded. Was it a warning from extraterrestrials demonstrating their power without annihilating humanity? Was it Tesla's ghostly fingerprint on history, proving he unlocked forces far greater than our modern world dares to admit? Or was it the Earth itself, releasing energies we do not yet understand, hinting that our planet holds secrets as dangerous as any from the stars? The forest grew back. The crater never appeared. The sky has since remained silent. Yet the Tunguska event lingers as an open wound in the human story, an explosion without explanation, a cosmic riddle that refuses to be neatly solved. It whispers of truths that may never be revealed, truths that could overturn everything we think we know about nature, science, and our place in the universe. Perhaps the real conspiracy is not what happened on that summer morning in 1908, but why, after more than a century, the answers remain hidden. Was it chance, or was Tunguska a signpost, pointing toward a future when humanity will finally understand what struck from the sky and why it chose Siberia as its stage?
The lost civilization of Atlantis. Myth, memory, or buried truth? Few legends have cast as long and haunting a shadow as Atlantis, the magnificent city said to have risen in splendor only to be swallowed by the sea. For some, it is merely a myth, first told by Plato as an allegory of hubris and downfall. For others, it is a memory of a real civilization, one that reached heights of power and knowledge unknown to the ancient world, only to vanish in cataclysm. Yet the most unsettling theory is not that Atlantis existed and was lost, but that fragments of its legacy survive in hidden hands, preserved by secret societies or buried beneath oceans waiting to be awakened. Plato's dialogues Timaeus and Critias are the source of the tale. He describes Atlantis as a powerful island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, today's Strait of Gibraltar, rich in resources, advanced in engineering, and governed by divine kings. But its ambition grew corrupt, and the gods punished it, sinking it beneath the waves in a single night of fire and flood. Skeptics dismiss this as allegory, a moral tale of arrogance. Yet others note that Plato insisted the story was true, passed down through Egyptian priests. Could he have been preserving memory rather than myth? The conspiracy of Atlantis lies in its persistence. Across the world, cultures hold flood myths of civilizations destroyed by water. The Sumerian deluge, Noah's flood, Indian epics, and Native American traditions. Could all these tales be echoes of a single event, an ancient catastrophe that destroyed a global civilization? If so, was Atlantis not a single city, but a symbol of an entire age lost to time? Evidence seems to flicker across history like ghostly fragments. In the Mediterranean, ruins of mysterious stone structures lie submerged off the coasts of Spain, Greece, and Malta. In the Atlantic, sonar scans have revealed strange grid-like patterns on the ocean floor, dismissed as natural formations, but to some, the remnants of drowned cities. Off Japan's Yonaguni Island, massive stone terraces suggest deliberate construction. Are these scattered clues of a forgotten world order?
Then comes the question of knowledge. Many point to the uncanny achievements of ancient civilizations. Egyptian pyramids aligned with celestial precision, megaliths scattered across continents, and technologies we cannot replicate today as evidence of inherited wisdom from Atlantis. Did the survivors of that lost world seed civilizations across the globe, giving birth to the sudden flowering of advanced societies in disparate regions? But if Atlantis left survivors, where did they go? Conspiracies link them to secret societies like the Freemasons and Rosicrucians, who claim descent from ancient builders. Symbols of Atlantis, sunken temples, tridents, all-seeing eyes, recur in the esoteric traditions of these groups. Was their hidden purpose not merely political but preservational, to safeguard fragments of Atlantean science until humanity was ready to receive them again? Others take the theory further, suggesting Atlantis was not merely advanced but technologically superior to anything we know today. They speak of crystal energy sources, machines that harness the Earth's electromagnetic field, even aircraft and weapons capable of unimaginable power. The cataclysm that destroyed Atlantis, then, may not have been divine punishment, but the result of their own hubris, technology spiraling out of control. If true, their story is less a legend than a warning that civilizations, no matter how advanced, carry within them the seeds of their own destruction. The most unsettling conspiracies suggest Atlantis has never been fully lost. Some believe remnants survive beneath Antarctica's ice, buried in a frozen tomb, with expeditions secretly uncovering ruins under government cover-ups. Whistleblowers speak of vast cities entombed beneath glaciers, with relics of a civilization that once spanned the Earth. Could this explain why Antarctica is so fiercely controlled, its interior restricted from public exploration? And then there are those who connect Atlantis not to the past, but to the future. Perhaps the story was not of a lost world, but of cycles, civilizations rising and falling across millennia, destroyed by floods, fire, or cosmic events, only for survivors to rise again. If so, Atlantis may not be a singular place, but a recurring fate. The fear is not that Atlantis was destroyed once, but that our own world is simply the next Atlantis, waiting for its night of fire and flood.
Why does the legend endure? Because Atlantis is more than a story. It is a mirror. It reflects our yearning for lost golden ages, our suspicion that history is incomplete, and our dread that power without wisdom leads only to ruin. Every discovery of sunken ruins, every forbidden artifact, every whisper of hidden societies preserving Atlantean wisdom feeds the suspicion that Plato's tale was no allegory but a fragment of memory deliberately obscured. The conspiracy of Atlantis is not only that it may have existed, but that its truth is being kept from us. If its ruins were truly found, they would rewrite history, shatter our understanding of human origins, and reveal that we are not the pinnacle of civilization, but inheritors of a forgotten cycle. Perhaps this is why the legend is treated as myth, not because it is false, but because the truth is too destabilizing. Atlantis, whether real or imagined, continues to haunt humanity's imagination. It is a ghost civilization, calling to us from beneath the waves, whispering of grandeur and downfall, of secrets lost and secrets preserved. If it existed, then somewhere in the depths or beneath the ice lies proof that humanity has lived, fallen, and risen before, and may do so again. And so the question remains, is Atlantis a fable, a warning, or the buried truth of our forgotten past? If it is the latter, then its final secret may be this: the cycle of rise and destruction has not ended. Atlantis is not gone. It is us.